Okay, hey everybody. Great to see so many of you here again. We have an increasing number of shareholders actually each year attending these AGM. One of the few occasions we have to meet you. So it's actually a great pleasure for us. Do stay around if you want to. The whole team is here, so please do stay around, grab a coffee with us afterwards as well. Sometimes it's just easier to ask questions one-on-one, so we're all very open to that. I will give you a brief overview of the major events during the year. I'll give you, baked into that, so to say, a little bit of the Q1 highlights, what's happened the first quarter, and I'll also give you the impact numbers. We've just calculated the environmental impact, so the water and carbon savings for 6 of our companies. So I'll tell you a bit about that as well and how that's going. Questions, of course, more than welcome. This has been the growth since 2013. Like this is somewhere where I got on board the company. I remember we had done 77% growth or something, and we were happy about that at the time. Now it's 77%. I think we had 80% that year. Now it's 77%. And I think now people have gotten used to even higher growth. So despite the fall in share price the last year, this past year is actually a year that we, for many of our companies, to a large extent, is fairly happy with, which might sound like a surprising statement, but really a lot of things have actually been going the right way for a lot of our companies this year and keeps doing so. So I'll tell a bit about that. We are also calculating, and we'll let you know more about that as it comes, but we are calculating now also, of course, our own ownership weighted part of these revenues. And as we are now increasing our stakes in several of the holdings that are growing well, this would actually be significantly larger if we included that, but we'll do that as a separate release once we have the audited statements from all our companies. And, well, main events. One of the main events from us, of course, is that we announced a strategy update where we actually, this is what we're doing. We've gone actually to a company group, one step at a time. So we're identifying the companies that we think are going really well and that are fairly close to profitability, and then we've announced that we can actually increase to over 50% even in some of those. We've done that in the first one, Eagle Filters, where we went to 63.4, but we actually have an option to go to 80%. Nuka, we have almost 50. We have a convertible loan in there that can also take us over 50%. And Sophie Rescue Club, Swap, also companies that we have increased in over the year. And all of these actually very strong performers as well, I would say. We raised close to 5 million euro because, of course, we've taken an increasing funding burden as well in some of these companies to make sure they reach profitability. Portfolio companies now, the average ownership is 18.5%. I don't have the exact, but I would imagine it's somewhere around 13% when I stood here a year ago, 13 to 14%. So a big increase actually in average ownership, which means, of course, that there's a bigger part of the value upside when they grow. And that's an important thing for us we see that in times of exit, when we actually sell, that of course that matters a lot for the value we will get out of the firms. It's not always so easy for the shareholders to see it, because in reality you look at how the firm is performing, and then you can see that it's a positive or negative, but in reality, of course, the ownership percentage matters a lot in the end. The companies here on the top are actually the ones that are our core holdings now, where we have a more active role and where we have gone in with more money. I'll go through some of the key events in our core holdings, some of the key things that have happened. Eagle, our biggest holding actually. Does anybody know what this is perhaps? So these are actually turbine blades. And what happens in turbine blades is that they get fouling over time. And then the turbines run not as efficiently. And this is what Eagle filters by filtering the intake air to a turbine. They clean these so that the air is cleaner, the blades don't get as fouled, and then they run more efficiently. They can typically save up to 3% in efficiency gains. And then they also increase the output of the turbine. And they decrease the downtime, because you don't have to stop it and wash it as you're doing today. That is Eagle's proposition, basically. A company where we've increased heavily. I think we had 10% when I stood here last year. So a big increase in ownership in this one. Growth in revenue, 37%, they're now at 1.9. And Q1 has actually been exceptionally strong in Eagle Filters. We don't give out Q1 numbers for each of our firms, but it's gone really well, mainly based on a strong repeat order stream that has started to come to the company. We replace these filters every now and then so then they can get repeat orders. So that's Eagle. This is a company that we are currently supporting a lot. We want to help accelerate its growth, of course, because of our high ownership. So we're supporting them with communication, even helping them get new talent into the company. So Nuka is a company that helps big real estate increase the value of their properties by measuring. Basically, they take all the data in a building and they're able to measure it. And of course, they can measure energy, sustainability data, air quality, and the likes. But that also gives a possibility for a lot of new services, just using the data that is already in the building. A service that they launched this year, for example, to an energy company is that they are actually selling the capacity to decrease the heat in their buildings. And they actually get paid from the energy company to do so at certain peak hours. And then they share that money with the property owner. So when the property owner adds that application to Nuka, they actually get paid. They actually don't pay for that software application. It's an interesting addition to their portfolio of software. These are some of the customers they have gotten during the year. So also a company that's been performing really well. And I think they more than doubled, 125% in monthly recurring revenue, which is the actual fixed, so to say, fee that they get per month from the customer is the most important parameter for us in Nuka. And that has been growing by 125% during 2017. Company has recently also gotten international customers, and that is really where the growth will happen going forward. Nocart, you may have seen it in the papers, and this, I think, is no secret that it may be one of the reasons why our share price has taken a tumble. There was a negative article about Nocart in one of the bigger papers here in Finland. And we since have released our own information, or Vesa Coroner's statement on it. And also a company that has a strong revenue intake year, of course. I mean, in reality, a $200 million order from Zambia, 14 million from Kenya. But there has been some delay in the Zambia order. And that was also part of the article, of course. We have already released statements regarding that. So the unaudited revenues were some 30 million euro, but that, of course, was also something that maybe the market had expected even more. Rescue Club. Probably some of you already use Rescue to rescue food. I can imagine. Quite a few of our shareholders tend to do. So also a company that's been performing really well over the years, but also one that has had its challenges over the year. Sales over platform was approximately 1.5 million euro, but the monthly purchasing users was up 212% during the year. First quarter has basically had a rough February. We had, I think there were negative articles in basically all the papers, all media outlets in Finland, because the former CEO got a sentence that was written about everywhere. So if you haven't seen it, you probably haven't read the papers. So the company took a little bit of a hit that month, but in reality growth has picked up already in March. So I think the company handled that really well also. And the company in itself was not actually involved in that, but of course, when it's mentioned all over media, it's still a big challenge. So monthly sales still up actually 8.5% during Q1. Swap.com, you've probably heard about before as well, unless you're here maybe for the first time. I get an increasing part of my wardrobe actually from Swap.com. I've been there now twice, and I selected things from the warehouse the last time, and now started ordering from Sweden as well. There's this service you can use that lets you actually order things from the States. So an increasing amount of what I wear tends to be from Swap actually. So also been growing really well, but actually focusing a lot more on profitability in Swap. Have done already basically since a little over a year ago, but even stronger so now. We spent a lot of marketing efforts, and they have paid off in reality really well. They have a huge user base, and I think the repeat customers are now actually over 70% in swap.com. So they have a good base to build from. Margins are also improving all the time. So profitability is really our aim with Swap. And it happens a little bit at the expense of growth. We've gotten used to maybe doubling or tripling the revenue. And this revenue is, I haven't calculated the percent, and of course it's still growth, but it's not at those levels. 14 million approximately in 2017. Enterprise has had actually, I would say, an extraordinary 2017. This is a company that in reality had quite a few challenges when I started as the CEO. So Enterprise puts sensors in place, measures and analyzes and are able to manage compressed air systems in the manufacturing industry more efficiently. They can typically save up to 30% of the electricity used in big factories. We are selling it completely as a revenue sharing service. So customers get something like 20% of the sharing year one, Enterprise gets 80%, customer gets 40% year two, Enterprise gets 60%, and then it goes down. Should land in a support fee after a few years. I think they signed 8 contracts during 2017 with big mega factories in China. It's the world's largest or second largest flat screen manufacturer, for example, now uses Enterprise. One of the, I think, top 3 car manufacturers in China now use it. And they typically start with one factory, and then they tend to have 10, 15 factories of the same size where they can roll it out. And they have started also getting the first recurring revenue during 2017. So, and the first 2 European customers, which is sort of it's like a reversed internationalization in Enterprise. We started in China and focused completely there, partly because of the carbon emissions, of course, but also because of the big manufacturing industry. And we've now gotten Scania, the truck manufacturer, as one of the owners. And they've installed in their factory, main factory in Södertälje in Sweden. And we've gotten Dur in Germany. It's one of the biggest suppliers to the car industry, not only in Germany, but all over the world. It's a huge listed company in Germany. And actually one that we helped get on board while I was sitting in Germany. So we have had a big role in that. And they now also signed them as a customer in Europe. So then I have the first reference customers here in Europe, and we'll start growing also here. They filed 2 patents. And maybe the filing of the patent doesn't sound like such a big deal, but the innovation in itself and their software development really has been. They have now, I think, 3-4 people in Lund, Sweden, that are developing their software further, using artificial intelligence and neural networks to make it even better. And it's now turning into a more full, so to say, autonomous is maybe a word I shouldn't use because it tends to never be that software, but it's getting closer to it so that it actually works for itself and not just as a decision-making support for the people using it. So also going really well. Enterprise. Exits. We did actually 4 exits last year. Well, one was this quarter. Enterprise, a really small one, basically to show the multiples we are actually generating already in a company like that. Enterprise is not profitable yet, and we just listed it on First North is not like a big IPO, it's more like a startup growth market, as you know, since we are on it. But we still actually had 11.3 times the invested amount when we exited Enterprise. So it was to show the kind of value we are generating in those cases when we step in really early. But we still own 35.6, so we still have a big stake in that firm. We aim to take it to the world leader in software for managing compressed air systems. So we have high hopes for it still. We sold Plug Surfing to Fortum. Plug Surfing is the company who had this app where you can find charging stations for your electric vehicle. And then when you get there, you can charge using the app. So they were consolidating a lot of the charging points across Europe. It's been an incredible journey, actually, when it's been in our portfolio. I don't know how many charging points they had when we first invested, but it wasn't a lot. And when we sold it now, they have 60,000 charging points that you can charge from. So they are taking a huge role, actually, in making sure that electric vehicles can get more widespread, because this whole charging anxiety is of course a big part of that market growth. We've agreed with the buyer not to disclose the contract value, so we can't say the exit price, but we can say that it gave us an 18% annual return, at least over the years it was in our portfolio. And that might sound above average, but in reality we aim for higher returns when we hold investments. So although of course it gives us cash and can be seen as a positive, it could also of course be even higher. One in Savo Solar, I mean, we've announced it already. In one, we basically sold the shares to the founders of the company. We have a potential upside if it goes well in it. And Savo Solar, we had very little left, to be honest. We had been selling it over time and decreasing our ownership, but we sold the last percentages during the year. AGM, but I want to touch upon a little bit the big markets and sort of industry activities that we are operating in and why we do that. I think this is in Bali, or? Yeah, Bali. This is in Bali, yeah. So this is actually a real picture with real rubbish, real trash that you can see. This is unfortunately a common sight in a lot of wastewater streams. They should be called water streams, but in reality, this is how it looks. And we have companies, of course, that clean water. Sulfur filtration basically makes sure that water can recirculate in industrial processes. Saves a lot of water, and of course treats it locally so you don't have to withdraw it from local water streams as well. A lot of water-intensive industries are actually located in places where there's not a lot of fresh water availability, because when they were located there, typically that wasn't maybe an issue. But in reality, you can actually tell the next year's fashion color by looking at the water streams in China these days. That's actually how you can predict which color your clothes will have the coming season if you go there. This is sort of I think it's an arty picture to show that. And we are also in fashion. That's one of the industries we are operating in. Another is food. I mentioned rescue. A lot of food actually gets wasted each year. I think it's I don't know if it's 30% in total or maybe 15% just in restaurants, but actually just gets thrown in the bin. And it's also one of the industries that pollutes the most. You probably heard it about the meat industry, but agriculture and also production of food actually is one of the big polluters of the world. We have companies in that industry as well. This is a pile of clothes that Swap used during, I think it was Earth Day, as a part of a marketing campaign. Most of our clothing gets worn less and less times, transported longer distances, and then is typically thrown in landfill. And this is, of course, what Swap is trying to solve. We have companies in buildings consuming about 30-40%, I think, of the world's energy is actually consumed in buildings. Still a lot of low-hanging fruit to decrease energy use in buildings. And in manufacturing. This is a picture from China, and where a lot of the manufacturing is located. And where still more than 50% of the electricity is produced from coal-powered plants. Although solar is growing really well there, it's still mainly coal. So these are energy, water, fashion, food, and manufacturing are actually the big 5 mega industries that we have increased our ownership in. Companies within those industries. So our companies have typically found a wasted resource in those industries that they are actually somehow monetizing and making value of. Whether it's clothes that are being thrown away and then they're selling them secondhand as swap, or whether it's waste in power production from gas plants, which Eagle is actually making money from. But they've typically found a waste stream that they can make money from, and that also improves the environmental performance in these industries. And well, you've probably seen this picture. The planet got destroyed, but for a beautiful moment in time, we created a lot of value for shareholders. This is really the opposite of what we want to be. We want to create a lot of value for our shareholders, but we want to not destroy the environment at the same time. We want to do the opposite. So our primary purpose is really to have a positive impact on the environment for every euro revenue that our companies make. And we go through great length to actually make sure that that is done. That is one of the reasons we actually positioned Enersize towards China. is because they have the biggest environmental impact data, and it is really important for us. These are the results this year. We started measuring last time. We looked at our methodology is in a way pretty straightforward. We look at when our solutions are in an industry and operating or being bought by a private consumer on the street, what's the effect that is having on the CO2 emissions of the world? How much is it decreasing them compared to us if they wouldn't be around our companies? And then we try to look at that over the year. And then we do the same for water. And then we subtract all the impact that the companies are having, all their air travels, all their commuting, or whatever operational impact they are having. And then we get a number. In reality, it's way more difficult than that. We have to look at a lot of life cycle analysis studies and do a lot of measurements just to make sure that this is fairly accurate. So we added a lot of things to the methodology this year. Otherwise, the revenue growth has been a lot stronger than the growth in CO2 savings because we got added more restrictions to the calculations. We also started measuring water for more companies. We only measured 2 last year. This year, 6. I think that more than doubled this year, actually, the water savings. So it's a huge effect already that our companies are having. Taking 107,000 Finnish cars off the road is the equivalent of the carbon that they are saving last year. Or eliminating the CO2 emissions of 29,000 Swedes. Water is even more stunning figures because it's such volumes. So it's 106,000 Swedish homes, 1,500 Olympic-sized swimming pools that our companies are saving in fresh water. And it's 1 billion toilet flushes. If you take an average toilet flush, it tends to vary a lot actually across the globe, we noticed. But the average toilet flush is something like 1 billion toilet flushes saved in fresh water. So numbers that we are extremely proud of actually. And this is actually what it results in. For each euro of revenue for our firms, 8 kilograms of CO2 equivalents was not emitted last year. And almost a cubic meter of water was not drawn from rivers and lakes around the world. Final slide, just a little bit about how we are going forward, which always seems weird because we're already in the middle of it once we're into the first quarter. But international reach is extremely important, as you can imagine, for all of our companies. They are typically operating on global markets. They go where the selling points for their solution is most attractive. We try to help them with that. There's a reason we are in Los Angeles, California. There's a reason we have helped companies get into China through our strategic owner that we actually have there. And this continues to be extremely important for us and our companies. Increased shareholder information. We have, as you notice from the revenue growth, we have had companies that have started out, of course, as almost pre-revenue, but they are now coming to levels where we can communicate more about them. We can give historical growth. We can show more during the year how they're actually landing orders, etc. So we'll put a lot of effort on increasing shareholder information to all of you the coming year. We already have this plan, but we are waiting now for audited numbers for all our firms before we release the first more detailed info to you. So there will be more shareholder info about all our companies the coming year. And this third point I want to mention, because it may seem obvious to us since we are with the companies every day, but this technology and customer acceptance risk has in many ways been removed from a lot of our firms. That doesn't mean that they are risk-free, because customer risk never really disappears. There can be new competitors, and of course, anything can happen to a company. But this initial customer risk, where you actually don't know if their business idea is attractive enough, or if it will take off on the market, if there is even an offset for it, that I would say has largely been removed. And also the technology risk has largely been removed in a lot of our holdings. Doesn't mean that risk has disappeared, however. Quite a few of them are still in need of further funding to grow their business. And that is, of course, to get that at attractive terms, or to get it at all for that matter, can stop any company in its tracks. So that will also, of course, be a focus for the coming year, to fund the ones that are still in need of additional capital. And the last point is to find talent. It is the people that build any company. And if you want to grow internationally, it's very specific talent that you need to attract to the companies. Typically, it should be somebody that maybe has done it before. if you want to make sure that you have success, but it needs to be a certain caliber of people, and it's not so easy to find. So this is a bottleneck, I would say, for sales and marketing tends to be the most obvious, but it still is the most common bottleneck, I would say, for a lot of firms to grow. So we will focus on helping our companies finding additional talent for international growth the coming year. We are already doing so. We've been in interviews basically 24/7 the last week. So do send people our way if you have any colleagues that are good at that, because we're constantly on the lookout for it. So it might be good to know.